Okay, good afternoon. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. My name is Tamir Hardof. I'm Director of Product Marketing in our Enterprise Systems Marketing, and I head up marketing specifically for our wireless portfolio. And I want to welcome you all here today to Juniper. First time we're participating in this event. We're very excited to have you all here. A couple of just logistics to share. We have refreshments over in this corner in the back, and we have the restrooms just out that door to the right. I'm going to jump right in. We have a very exciting session for you today. I did also want to mention, some of you might notice the AP that we have on the ceiling there. That is our previously branded still trapeze. This building is actually due for renovation in about 60 days. So we weren't able to get anyone to put in our new equipment here. But if you want to look across the street, across Matilda, brand new campus buildings going up. That's where people are going to start moving into in 60 days. And that's all new, shiny, latest Juniper equipment, including our full wireless portfolio there. So I want to introduce the team that's going to be talking to you today. I'll start off with Tina.
Hi, I'm Tina Herrera. Welcome to Juniper. I'm glad to see you all here today, and I'm so happy we've had an opportunity to host you here. I've been in the wireless LAN space for about 10 years now. I was at Cisco for many years in their wireless networking group, went to Maru for a couple years, helped them go public, and now I'm here at Juniper, and you will see why very shortly, why I've made the move here. Your main speakers today, though, are these two guys, so I'm going to hand it over to Bruce. Introduce himself.
Tim.
Actually, Tim?
I guess Tim McCarthy. I run technical marketing for the wireless LAN product group. Been working with controller-led wireless since 2002. Started with Trapeze. Went through that transition. Now here at Juniper, doing technical marketing.
Hi, I'm Bruce Alexander. We have the beauty, the brains, and I'm not sure what I am here. But, I know some of the names when I look through who was here. I've been in the Wi-Fi industry since Wi-Fi started. I was with Aeronet when we started that company. I was with Telzon before that. If they go back to Telzon days, I was their first RF engineer. So, been around a little bit. While I was at Cisco, I was there for 11 years. I ran their technical marketing team and spent 2 years as the exclusive healthcare specialist for wireless for the US. And spent 4 other years in the channels industry over there helping our partners learn how to sell wireless. Last year, I decided that it was time to retire. Cisco helped me with that by giving me a nice package. So, and I thought, well, I'll take it easy for a while. And then somebody called me and says, we have a real interesting new product over at Juniper. And after I took a look at what was here, it opened my eyes. I said, that's pretty cool. And that was over a year ago. So here I am. I've been around here for a long time.
So you wrote the site survey book?
I wrote the site survey book. Yep.
Right.
So I'll mention 1 or 2 things out of there while I talk. I won't be bashful. One thing, if the guys that know me, I'm straight up and honest. If it's a duck, I'll call it a duck. So that's the way it is. If it's not that way, then you guys shouldn't be here. So that's the way that we'll treat this. I'm going to walk through a number of different things. Tim's going to do some of the presentation, and he's our demo guy. He really does a good job of that. So better than I can do. So let's just get rolling on what we want to talk about. A few years back, Juniper realized that their switching business was growing, and that wasn't where the industry was going to stay for network connectivity. It really, in fact, was moving to the wired and wireless, as we all know. So they started determining what were they going to do from a wireless point of view. Do they build? Do they buy? How do they get into the wireless? And when you evaluate the amount of intellectual property it takes to put a wireless program together, and the time, and the people, it takes a couple of years just to get started, let alone to build a product. So they went out on a search to find out what's out there, what's good, and what's available. And in looking at the vendors that were out there, when they came across Trapeze, they were impressed with the technology they had. They were impressed with some of the innovations that they were working on and had completed. And all in all, their whole system fit well into Juniper. And if you know much about our switching and routing and some of the things we do, particularly in the switching side, there's a lot of similarities to what's going on there. And we continue to develop those today. We're not standing still. We're going to talk to you a bit about what we've done since Trapeze was purchased by Juniper back in December of 2010. So that's almost 2 years, coming up on 2 years here shortly. So we've come quite a ways. We've got a lot of new innovations we've thrown into there. Things like clustering, which we do similar to what we do in switching. And some stuff that really makes this one of the easiest systems to operate once it's installed. And I'll reiterate that once it's installed here in a little bit. When we heard, when I was over at the other company, that Juniper was going to buy Trapeze, we thought, what in the heck are they doing? You know, that's just boneheaded, because we hadn't heard of Trapeze. We knew they were out there. It's not like you hadn't heard, but nothing was happening. Well, quite honestly, there's jump right into this. I thought there was another slide in there, so my apologies for that. Quite honestly, Trapeze has about 6,000 customers. We've got over 1 million APs installed. The majority of those don't have the Juniper name or the Trapeze name on them, though. Nortel. That was the model for Trapeze, was the OEM to somebody with somebody else's name. So a lot of the information out there is with someone else's name. So with that, they jumped into the marketplace with wireless. They've got an established product, and they've taken that product and really started to drive some new innovations. So we want to talk a little bit about that. I mean, today alone, we're holding in 40 to 50 patents in the Wi-Fi arena, so it's not something that's brand new. As we introduce Jay, he's not here yet. Jay's going to talk to you about our design of the new AP and actually get into the guts and what we've done. And we'll talk about performance. We'll talk about our architecture, and we'll talk about some of the things that we're looking at coming. One of the questions I want to ask before we get started, because my next build on this slide, who was the first company to build a Wi-Fi controller-based, or back then it was called switched wireless? Symbol?
The Aeronet, no.
Airspace?
Airspace.
Actually, it was Proxim. Proxim had built one. Didn't take off very well. Then Symbol actually came online. Now, the second question is why? Why did they move to a controller-based architecture?
Centralized management.
Money. It was all about taking the parts out of the AP that were being used in every AP, that same function across the APs, putting them in a centralized box so I have one set of components instead of 100 set of components, and doing it. Now keep in mind Symbol's marketplace. They're big into barcode scanning, and they're big into retail, and in retail you work on margins of 1 and 2%. So anything that you spend in overhead is huge. So saving money is the critical thing. Before the controller-based architecture, this is what was out there. And this is a little background. I just want to explain how we got to where we're at. It was autonomous mode, standalone, whatever we want to call it. Basically, Wi-Fi to Ethernet and Ethernet to Wi-Fi, and everything happens in the AP. The most efficient, performance-oriented way to do it. Do it everything right there. But the problem is, how do you manage it? How do you build from the management into the reliability? If one goes down, the others don't know it. It's difficult to do unless you have some software or hardware overseeing all that. Well, when Symbol came out with the switch-based architecture, or controller-based architecture, there we go, thin and fat APs, whichever we want to call them here, that helped the management. It helped the security because we do authentication back there. The problem was performance meant traffic goes from wireless to wired internet, Ethernet, to controller, back to my network, and then out to the destination. In fact, if you mention my book, if you look at my book, you'll see I pick hard on controller-based architecture because at that time, that meant I had to double the traffic on my network. I got the trombone effect, and there's problems with that. So, but we could manage it easy, we could secure it easy, the performance was a problem, and if the controller went down, my network was offline. So those were problems. Along about 2002, Cisco saw what Motorola was doing, what Proxim was doing, and the upstart of Blackstorm, which turned into Airspace and some of those. And they said, we understand this. This is performance, but we need these two things in here. We've got to have them. How do we do it? We built a Wilson, wireless LAN service module. Plug it into Cat 6K. I see head shaking. You know what I'm talking about? And we separate the data plane and the control plane. Data goes to the network, and the control goes to knock center where the Cat 6K is. Works good. It was called SWAN, Structured Wireless Aware Network. Okay? Along about 2004, Cisco buys Airspace and says Airspace took over the kind of the gist of everything going on in wireless and says, that's not how we do it. This is how we do it. And Wilson and Swan went out the window, flew away. So they had the performance built into it because they were going data direct. They had management and security done because that was working. Well, back when Trapeze started and started looking at how they were doing things, they actually do both. You have the option to send it through the controller or to locally switch it. We still do that today. That means data traffic doesn't have to go to the controller. It's important to remember that as we talk about and start whiteboarding, that data traffic doesn't have to go to the controller. That improves things drastically. In fact, so drastically, let me throw a couple numbers on the board. If my controller supports, say, 250 access points, it's a dash 250. That's not ours, by the way. And it's got a 10 gig data path, 10 gig. And I want to support 250 APs. With a 10 gig data path and an 802.11n access point, let's say my access point has 100 megabits of throughput. We all know that an N access point can go well over that, right? How many access points can I get in before I saturate my backplane on my controller? 100. I think that's the right number. I moved to 802.11 AC. We'll talk about that later in the roundtable. Jay might even mention it. 200, 300, 400 megabits per AP? Isn't that what you're talking about? They, the industry. So let's say 400, if we're really running hard and heavy. That means that controller can now support 25 APs. It's supposed to support 250. But if I'm locally switching, I don't have that problem. I can move to an AC access point and not replace my switches, my controllers. As long as I've got gig E switches rolling, I'm good to go. So locally switching not only improves the performance of the day-to-day, it helps lock in your investment down the road. So they started this years ago, the Trapeze. We continue to drive it today. It gives us the performance, the management, it gives us the security, and as we're going to talk about, we've got the reliability fixed in it as well. So that's kind of the intro to how our architecture sets up. So with that, what we're going to talk about today, kind of in this first section here, we're going to break this into, I think, 3 sections. We want to talk a little bit about, number one, auto RF, ARM, RRM, there's various names for it depending who you are. If you asked me 5 years ago about dynamic RF, let's call it that, generic name, I'd have told you if you use it, you're a fool, because it was horrible. Today, that has changed across the board. The auto RF and the things that they're doing there today make life so much easier. It's one of those things that you've got to have. When we talk about spectrum analysis, how many guys in here, and I know, like I say, I know some of the names, so I know some of your SEs have been out in the field lugging around Advantest or Tektronix or one of the old analyzers. How many have used the Cognia when it first came out? Best thing since sliced bread at that time, wasn't it? It was great. They sent me a demo of it with an invoice for 3 weeks. I had to send it back to Klaus. I called him and said, you ain't getting it back, send me a bill. It was that good. When Cisco bought it, I was thrilled to death. It's a while back. I view it now much like I view Wi-Fi certification. Would you buy a client that wasn't Wi-Fi certified? I wouldn't. You shouldn't buy a network, wireless AP network, that doesn't support spectrum analysis. We're going to actually show you how ours works. It meets and exceeds the majority of anything anybody needs. And the way we do it is unique. We do it not with a specialized AP like some people do. We do it with our standard AP. And we support both data to clients and spectrum analysis simultaneously. And we do it through licensing. there's that evil word, licensing. The licenses for our spectrum analysis, and I'll throw numbers out even though they may not mean much to you guys. The most expensive one is $105, list price. If you buy in quantities bigger than that, it's about 60-some dollars. Not expensive. Number two is
per AP per.
That's for groups of them, but it's per AP, yeah. Now you can take those and you buy them for, let's say you buy it for 4 APs, and I'm using them over in this neck of the woods today, and I got a problem over there they reported. I can basically go into my management and move it over there. I can use it like a tool rather than put it in everywhere. If I'm a hospital, I might want to put it in everywhere. If I'm a manufacturer, something that has much less chance of interference, but there's always a chance, I want to use it like a tool to be able to move it around. And that's what we offer on the spectrum analysis side. In addition to that, we'll talk a little bit about how we do provisioning. We've got actually some good demos around onboarding of both guest access devices as well as employee-owned devices and company-owned devices. And then the switching architecture, I'm going to kind of whiteboard some stuff there. Sometimes it's easier to talk about than putting pretty pictures up. And then our cluster controlling, the clustering is huge. There's a couple things around there that the clustering, the in-service software upgrades, there's a couple things there that for me as a guy that used to have to go out in the field and support customers, they rock. They really do. As I mentioned, we've got a lot of, in the history here, we've also got one of the simplest to operate networks. We call it Simply Connected. Internally, we have some other names we joke about. I will say up front, it's not the easiest one in the world to set up initially, at least the first time. Once you've done one, it's pretty easy. It's that learning curve you have to get over. Once it's set up, it's the easiest one on the network to manage. Doesn't matter how many controllers I have, I manage one. Doesn't matter how many APs are out there, I manage one entity. It's one thing that I manage in my whole system. And we'll talk more about that. I think Ken or Tim, you're going to show that on Ringmaster, right? We'll see what we got there. So it makes it the easiest operational system. And guess what? 75% or more of your cost of a network isn't in the initial capital, it's an operational cost. So if we can make that easier, makes life easier, it also reduces your overall cost. So that's one of the things that we've got there. Now let's talk real quick about the products and then we'll get into some architecture. We haven't been sitting still. The two bottom ones, the 300 series APs, a single AP and a dual radio AP. Those are both 802.11n, 2x2. They're designed for K through 12 schools. They're designed for areas where I don't need maximum performance. I don't need maximum coverage. I need just a good solid AP that'll work in there. And I'm very, very cost conscious. The 522, which is the AP that Tamir referred to that's hanging on the ceiling back there. That AP has been around for a while. It's a 2x2 802.11n. We still leave it in the lineup because we have a number of customers that are using it. And as you know, sometimes they don't want to move to something. They're testing, everything's done there. So we keep that in the lineup. And then we have the latest and greatest, the 532. It's a 3-stream, 3x3, best performance in the industry. And I'll explain that in a little bit. That's not a marketing term, guys. That's a fact. I'll explain why. So all of these, by the way, and we have an outdoor AP as well that's heated, NEMA enclosure, all that. All of these, by the way, support spectrum intelligence. They're all 802.11n. So we've kept the thing rolling in terms of what we're doing from development of access points. Again, we're going to walk through that 532 AP and some of the features, what we've done in it, look at the guts on the inside and such. Controller-wise, we've got a realm of controllers that go from 4 AP support and 12 AP support. These are hardware-oriented. The rest of those, the other 3 up here, they go in groups of APs. You buy licensing for them so you can build them, and you can scale and do it within budgetary needs. The 880 was designed here in-house at Juniper. It supports things like remote AP with encryption out to the remote AP over the internet. With the new code, IPv6 is supported. The WLC 880 was designed so that there's enough RAM, memory, processor power, and all that, that if someday somebody decided to put Junos on it, we could do that. We'll talk about that in a roundtable later. So those are some of the things that we've done in the controller base. And then we've got Ringmaster, our management and access control area. Ringmaster is really, really good at what it does. It's a great tool, and when we talk about the different things it can do, it's software for up to 1,000 APs, and it's hardware for up to 5,000 APs. And we do that because it's easier to support from a tech support team when we know what server it's on, when that many APs are being supported by it. It allows us to do a full life cycle spin, and we'll talk more about that as we get into the demos. SmartPass is our product that allows us to do things like BYOD and guest access. It's a great tool for doing everything from client-based application all the way down to radius accounting and keeping track of what's going on. And again, we've got some demos that we're going to do that include some of the SmartPass. It allows us to do basically provisioning by yourself, whether you're a guest or whether you're an employee. So that's kind of the introduction. And from there, we'll take it the next step over and start talking about where Juniper actually has some advantages. 4 things that we're going to pick on here. Performance at scale. How do we perform? How does the AP stand up? What are we doing with it? The second one is our management. We're going to really highlight some of the features in there and how it manages everything. And again, our manager can handle up to 32 controllers and up to 16,000 APs. Then we're going to demonstrate resiliency. You see there's a bunch of iPads we're going to pass out in a little bit, running some video streams over them. We'll be sitting in front of each of you, and we'll show you what happens when a controller goes down. Nothing. Then we'll talk about in-service software upgrades. When do you upgrade software on a system? Let's say my hospital calls me and one of the controllers keeps telling them that the power supply is overheating, and it's Monday. Sunday night is typically the slowest night in hospital, and that's when you typically do upgrades. So I'm going to have to go in there either overnight one night or wait till next week. But I don't know if I want to wait. So we do it while it's live. We're going to talk about how that's done. So let's just jump into the access point real quick. This is the 532. Latest access point. I say it's the best access point in the industry. I'm going to throw a name out. Does anybody know the name of Phil Bellinger? Phil Bellinger co-authored the 802.11 MAC layer. He was vice president of Aeronet all the way up through the time Cisco bought him. He was one of the founding members of WECA. Remember that name? Wireless Ethernet Compatibility Alliance, turned into Wi-Fi Alliance. He was the one that coined, I was lucky enough to be in the board meeting, when they coined the term Wi-Fi. Since then, he's been on to work with some other companies in different modes, Bel Air Networks, Vivado, a few others. And he's got a consulting company. So when it came time to have somebody evaluate our AP, outside of Tim and the guys here, we wanted a third party to do it. And we went to Phil and said, look, we have a new AP. We want to compare it to the industry. You go find what you consider is the best ones out there, and you compare it. You tell us how it is and be honest about it. And the reason I asked about Phil Bellinger is because he will be honest about it. He's not going to jeopardize his reputation to do something. Navarum, which is his consulting company, put together a report, and what they found was we outperformed the Cisco 3600 4x4 3-stream AP and the Aruba 135, I think it is, 3-stream AP with our 3-stream 3x3 AP.
So what were the tests? This can be highly arbitrable.
Right. Now, let me point this out. If you compare, and if you've seen the Cisco versus Aruba from Mircom, that test, the results from this test show that Cisco's better than their own test. The Aruba results on the Aruba versus Cisco shows this test has better Aruba performance than Aruba's own test. So they weren't taking the Cisco and the Aruba product and trying to twist it such that it didn't perform well. The tests actually show it performing better than those companies' own test reports. Gives you a little validity there. And he actually goes into detail on how he tests it in the report. He puts it on, I mean, they do things like put it on a round table and let it spin while it's taking averaging in all directions because you never stand the same direction.
So the Cisco and Aruba were the only ones
Those-
compared to?
Yeah, we didn't want to have 45 APs, so we said take the best. Those are the two most prominent in the industry. And according to those companies, that's their leaders. So we put those leaders out there. We tested against it. And that's what we found. We found 35% better performance on it. Now, 2.4, they're all virtually created equal. 5 gig, we outshine. That's why you show the 5 gig up here.
I cannot comment on the test, not knowing about it, but fair enough.
Yeah, it is it's published out there.
Honestly, you have two other companies, and there are 5 more, at least in the industry, having higher market share than you. So claiming being the best, it's, you know.
Well, at this point in time, the Cisco, by many people in the industry, is considered the best.
It has the biggest market share.
Right? And people, when you ask them, that's what the industry claims is the best.
Because they know Cisco. Yeah.
So
but
we took...
Pick and point, everybody here ask what is the best, for example, RF performance.
Understand.
Like, so what is the best on the quality of service? So what is the best?
Right.
Every vendor has its
and this,
strengths.
understand,
This
but we had to get something done so we can get it to market. Otherwise, it could take us 1.5 years to get it done. So you got to do a test, and down the road, we'll continue to add some others to it.
This test is rate over range.
Yeah, it's both rate and range. So it's truly performance when you look at throughput and you look at distance.
what per single clients, multiple clients, different kind of clients, different kind of applications?
Again, the test is published, so it's out there on the website. So feel free to read it. It talks about how they do it, what they used, the clients they used, all the details around it. So, I mean, that honestly, I mean, we can get into it today, but we don't have the time really to drive down deep. But the fact that when we compared it to what those other vendors did, the testing results here showed those vendors in a better light than their own testing did.